Same thing again, and I hope it doesn't trip the breaker or any such thing. I was talking about why I entered the debate in the parliament last Friday because I was concerned about what was being said to the country by the opposition leader. And as a result of that concern, I decided to enter the debate. And I entered the debate to make a definitive statement that, contrary to what was being said to the country, that the government was in fact embarking on tax increases, that coming from me as Prime Minister, I go on record saying that that is not so, because I want the population to know that that is not so. Taxation is something that is always very emotive. It causes people to react in all kinds of ways. It brings out all kinds of emotions. But it's really a management tool of the country. In this situation, the Minister of Finance came with the work of the Cabinet, guided by the Ministry of Finance, with respect to our supplementals. We were asking for approval for increased allocations in specific areas. There was the Finance Committee, which took place a few days before, where all questions, a broad range of questions can be asked about any change that is being made or anything that any member of parliament is concerned about or not clear on. And that's why the whole House is part of the committee. It's called a committee of the whole. Every member of parliament is a member of that committee. And we meet on the day, some day before, and we deal with the questions to the government on it. And then the government would have answered those questions in committee and come for the debate in the parliament, where the report of that committee comes to be passed into law by debate and voting. That's what's happening there. Standard practice. We asked for a specific amount of money for the reasons given. Immediately, it was being said that VAT was to be increased. Ladies and gentlemen, for the second time, I want to make it very clear, notwithstanding anything you've heard from the opposition, especially the opposition leader, there was no discussion in the cabinet about adjustment either upwards or downwards on VAT. That did not happen. So all the conversation about be careful, be aware, the government is about to do this, and the government, that is not true. What happened is that the opposition leader got access to some working documents of the cabinet. Those working documents started with a cabinet note, and it contains an appendix. An appendix is something you add on to a document for clarification, right? In the appendix, the work of the technical people of the Ministry of Finance, supporting the Ministry of Finance and the Cabinet, put in the appendix a whole set of information. And that information is, if the Cabinet needs such information, it's available there. But there was no recommendation, no discussion, and certainly no decision about that. All of you in the media would know, because we are attached to the hydrocarbon sector by our economic umbilical cord, every one of you would know and would have heard on many occasions it being said, if the price of oil goes up, we then are in line to earn X dollars. If the price of oil goes down by $1, the Ministry of Finance will lose a certain amount of dollars. Right? You all know that. You heard that on many, many occasions, especially when oil price is moving downwards relatively quickly. The Ministry of Finance and people in the know, economists around from the university, from the private sector, will talk about the potential reduction if the price goes down by $1, if it goes down by $10, so on. It is precisely that kind of information that technical people in the Ministry of Finance provide on VAT, on personal income tax, on virtually everything, because they're managing money. So for the opposition leader to have seen a document that shows those kinds of oscillations that refer to up and decrease, and select out a statement written by somebody for her saying that the government has taken a decision to increase VAT is quite disturbing. And then to go off on a campaign with that document, that appendix, as proof, and is now calling me a liar, and calling the cabinet a liar, calling the Ministry of Finance a liar, and this is the work of the opposition leader. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our circumstances can be influenced for the worse by statements like that coming from officials of the nation. When officials holding those positions speak, their words have effect. There are people in the financial sector, there are people in the business sector who will hear it and would be inclined to say where there is sound like that, there are statements. Where there is smoke, there is fire. I don't believe the government, I don't believe the Minister of Finance, and therefore I'll organize my business against the background that there are tax increases to come. That's what it is. And that is what that statement is about. And the last person who should be trying to provide proof to this nation that somebody in my government is lying to the country is the opposition leader. I don't want to go into any details about her conduct and her record, but I could tell you it's not good. I am a member of parliament of long standing, and I saw unspeakable slander put in the parliament about me, about my father, from the government run by that woman. I saw two of my cabinet colleagues having to lose their position, resign, because they were charged against a background that somebody said they did something corrupt. Eric Williams and Frankie Khan had to resign from the parliament. But the person making the allegation eventually was charged for perjury because he wrote in his own handwriting how he was encouraged to lie against Eric Williams and Franklin Khan and destroyed their career. Two ministers of government in this country, young men, professional men, who had their family destroyed. I remember Eric Williams' mother going to court with him on a regular basis. One of the most decent citizens I ever knew, the wife of a former mayor of Port of Spain, going with Eric to the court because his cabinet, his parliamentary colleague, arranged for somebody to lie on him and accuse him of taking a bribe in a motor car he didn't even own at the time. Dansam Dansuk eventually, before he died, went on record correcting that and going on record as to who put him up to it. So I don't want to hear Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bissessa talking about who lying in parliament and she has the proof. She has no proof because the government, we didn't even discuss it. It wasn't required to be discussed. And it said increase that, decrease that, and not only about that, but a whole range of things. She deliberately extracted talking about increase for that and came there in the parliament. And I simply want to ask the opposition leader, no matter how much political difficulty you are in the parliament, not to forget that you are an officer of state with serious responsibility and you are part of the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you are prepared to behave like that, you're on your own. But the PNM does not behave like that. Finally, a cabinet note, we have nothing to hide. She gets access to it. I mean, there are very few things in this country that are secure. So to come and say you got a leak and therefore you will bust a mark, we have nothing to hide. Because if we wanted to increase the tax, we will come and tell you so as we do it. We reduced it when we had to, when we thought it was a good policy, and it remains that way. We increase the allocation for people so as to make them access more tax-free income. We do that. This government, if it has done nothing during this period of time, this administration that I led, is to take decisions and hold ourselves responsible to the population for those decisions. Not all of them have been popular, but all of them we believe would be in the interest, the best interest of the population, and that is what we have been elected to do, not to get ourselves elected. We are elected to deal with your problems of a nation, and many of those problems, as we deal with them, many people have problems with what is done, but for the wider national good, it is our job to do it. And if a tax has to be levied, I mean, I was accused of being crazy. When going into the local government election, my argument was we are going to do everything possible to collect property tax. And I was advised by many people, you don't talk about tax and going to an election. I said, yes, we do, because that is what is required in the best interest of the population. So we don't have to hide our actions. And you don't have to rely on somebody stealing a piece of paper from somewhere and misrepresenting it to you to know how the government is going about your policy and your tax business. We have not added a single tax here. We are talking about collecting tax that is due and collecting it efficiently. That's why we are talking about a revenue authority. It's not a tax. It's not a new tax. It's efficiency in collecting the tax, so that those who owe the tax will pay it as the law requires. Nobody owes tax on profits unless profit is made. And if it's income tax, you have to have an income before you are taxed on income tax. Those are facts, undisputed facts. And therefore, when we say that we are going to have a revenue authority, to represent it as though it is some tax craziness in the country, the government is taxing everybody, is the law. Property tax is the law. You know who brought the law into being? The government that lady led. 2015, at the end of the period of amnesty, the cabinet that she led said to the parliament, the amnesty is over, meaning that the law of property tax is now in force. The law, the same law that we swear to uphold before we become office holders after the election. But then they then now go to the court and obstruct and block and quarrel and use the court as part of the election campaign, right? Because I want to make an observation here. The people who are opposed to the government seem to have no difficulty in getting access to the corridors of the court. Nothing wrong with that. But constipation attends the government's effort. But when they come in the court to raise all kinds of matters that are of their political interests as part of their ongoing political campaign, to undermine the government effort, they get no problems with that. Certain people seem to have the run of the court non-stop. And I think I must tell the country this, because I don't know if I get another chance to tell you this. The government goes to court because a citizen has a basket of hand grenades in a court matter that the police went after. It involved the CARICOM nation. The court ruled. All kinds of things were said to the court. The court chooses what it believes and what it doesn't believe and chastised the government, and it got as far as, I read the thing in the news. And the Prime Minister was brought into the matter as part of this conspiracy to abuse people's rights. But the end result was the court order. And the court order was to return the items to the complainant. The items were automatic weapons and hand grenades. And the court ruled that the case is lost by the state, hand back the items to the man. The government had to comply. But we asked for an early hearing because this is a matter of life and death in Trinidad and Tobago as far as we are concerned. As far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, you all could go and ask the Attorney General, asking for an urgent hearing on an appeal of that matter. I don't think we got a date in October to decide whether an urgent appeal could be had. I am not here wanting to engage the other arms of the state, but I think the population should know this. You understand? Because there are other matters that seem to have no difficulty going through the court. But let's take a matter like this. You may ask me where the hand grenades are. Maybe I should tell you I don't know. But what I could tell you is that I have not forgotten a corporal called Sanka, who on his birthday on Macrapo Road lost his life to a hand grenade inside a police car. Many of you are too young to know that. I will never forget that day. So I am simply asking my colleagues in the parliament that if you're going to speak for the people, the truth should come from your side as well as from the government on this matter of taxes, especially VAT. There's no truth to what is being formulated and narrated by the opposition. That came from the same source as the inheritance tax. I had never heard of that in government. I heard about it from the opposition. The same I never heard about, is it a presumptive tax? Last week was the first I heard about that, presumptive tax. As part of the package of taxes that the government is going to be raising against people. Ladies and gentlemen of Trinidad and Tobago, please disregard these matters. These statements, they're not true. And as for providing the proof, the people who fabricate the lies are in no position to provide the proof other than to own up to the lies that they have told. The second thing I want to talk about is the requirement for Tobago to expand its effort and its footprint and become a main or major tourism destination. Tobago will not become a proper tourism destination without an increase, a significant increase in the number of rooms, hotel rooms, high quality hotel rooms in Tobago. This is not a political statement. I'm speaking as a Tobagonian. Tobago as a destination where planes are today larger and faster than they were. So if you're going to get airlift coming from Europe or even the United States, it is quite likely that significant airlift would come in large planes because airlines are using larger planes for the economies of scale. Our airport was obsolete in the context of the new planes and the standards required by the international airlines that we want to attract. The government has taken a decision to give Tobago a chance to become a proper tourism destination because we believe that tourism in Tobago, and in Trinidad for that matter, is one doable area where diversification of our economy can come. Many of our CARICOM colleagues rely almost solely on tourism with the same resources or less than we have, physical and otherwise. So Tobago has the potential to improve its contribution to its people and to Trinidad and Tobago by becoming a destination that can attract proper inflows of visitors. We are currently spending approximately $1 billion on a modern airport terminal building that is due for completion early next year. And this is against the objection of some Tobagonians who somehow believe that this was not a good idea and must not be done. The central government is of the view that it is part of the development of Trinidad and Tobago, and notwithstanding the objection from local politicians in Tobago, we're going to build it. It's underway. And I'm managing it personally from the office of the Prime Minister, receiving a report every 4 weeks. And I'm satisfied that the work is going on according to plan after some delay in the way. Now, the next thing is this. Who's going to build these rooms? The government built the Hilton, the government built the Hyatt, the government built the Magdalena. Even if we want to build another hotel now, we don't have the money. So the government's policy is we look to the private sector. And this is what we had done, why we had invited, we invited Sandals, that brand, that family, who happened to have been friends of Trinidad and Tobago, to come to Tobago, look at Tobago. The government sent the Sandals people to Tobago. Look at Tobago in general. See if you see anywhere that you would like to have one of your brands placed. They said we'll have both in Tobago, Sandals and beaches. And they chose the site at Buku Estate. The Express and a handful of nameless, faceless people and others decided to tell the world that we're going to build a hotel at no man's land. No amount of telling them and people that hotel is not going on no man's land. The government bought Buku Estate. No man's land belonged to the Latos and Golden Grove Estate. It's a different place. That didn't help them. And they started to provide 2 pages a week, every weekend, 2 pages, attacking it on the environmental side of things. Well, everybody in this country knows that we use the EMA not to help us in our development, but to obstruct our development. That's what they use it for. We lost the steel, the aluminum smelter through the use of the EMA. We lost the Sandals through the use of that. Even before we got to a point of negotiating anything with the Sandals people, we got the land, got them on board. There were people objecting to the terms that had not even been established yet. But those terms are easy to establish because terms are known in Bahamas where there are many, Jamaica where there are many Sandals hotels, Barbados, St. Vincent, Latus, Grenada, Aruba. So it wouldn't have been difficult to organize terms because we in CARICOM, we talk about harmonization of fiscal incentives. We subscribe to that. We were not going to be giving Sandals anything special and different in Tobago when the brand is all over the region and you know what the template is. But you start to accuse the people of corruption and dishonesty and all manner of evil, and they say we don't need that, and they left. And they went to St. Vincent. Last weekend, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent was here. And he was telling the gathering at Napa that he is now the Prime Minister of a country that has the latest Sandals, the one that was supposed to be in Tobago. And it's employing 1,000 people. And of course, you know the knock-on effect of that. But it was not good enough for Tobago or too good for Tobago. Some people in Tobago, politicians in particular, and a couple of other, I dare say, well-financed idlers who spend their day telling you that because their parents were good enough to send them to the best school, I don't know what their qualification is now, and that they don't have to worry about the next meal because their trust fund's good, and them spend the time surfing, and if the hotel is built at Rocky Point, it will affect the waves in the sea so they wouldn't enjoy the surfing, and they go and smoke a marijuana there and meditate to your God. But let me tell you all something. You all chase the Sandals people out of Tobago. I, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, will move heaven and earth to make sure that the hotel is built at Rocky Point, because there are Tobagonians who have no trust fund, right? And who are waiting for a meal. There are farmers waiting for a market. And the same thing that is happening in St. Vincent, we are offering that to the people of Tobago. As long as I am Prime Minister, for one more day, I will stand in support of a hotel going through the rules, built at Rocky Point to increase the number of rooms in Tobago. I'm doing more than that too. We had a delegation here from Ghana, earlier last week, and we have a delegation coming from India. In that delegation are people who are involved in major hotel business outside of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm inviting them to go and visit Tobago to see if they see any interest in Tobago that they may want to bring what they're doing elsewhere in the world, us here, because Tobago needs more rooms. Tobago needs more airlift. Tobago needs a better airport. Tobago needs a better economy. What Tobago does not need is more morning work, where it's young people get up and work for half an hour, cut some grass and paint some stones, and people telling them that we like to go and surf. And if somehow, I mean, I did oceanography, I did geology, I did whatever. No, I can't figure out yet what a hotel 80 feet above sea level, inland, on land, has to do with waves breaking outside that you're surfing in. I am not going to prevent the government from supporting what is in fact a supportable project. As a matter of fact, somebody in Tobago sent me a black and white photograph of Dr. Williams and some people in Tobago at a time when that rocky point was Dr. Williams's wish to have a hotel on that site. And I tell you, nothing happens before its time, and now might very well be the time. I am not prepared to let people play politics again and lose another opportunity. I saw the papers asking people about the project, and everybody has a point of view. As is their right. I have one too. That's why I'm expressing it now. One person was actually saying, stop the project, because wait until local people could have a project there. I thought it was local people who was funding that project. Somebody knows otherwise. And taking objection in the ignorance that let local people do it. Well, it's local people doing it. I saw another one saying, why spend money on a new hotel? Why not spend the money on renovating the other hotels? You couldn't be serious. Because if an investor wants to build a new hotel with money that must be raised for that, why do you think if that hotel is not built, that investor will take his money or go and borrow money to go and renovate somebody else's hotel? That sound like sense to you? But more importantly, I'm seeing the same approach by the Express. 2 pages every weekend and sometimes during the week. Now, nameless, faceless persons commenting adversely on this project, seeking to incite people again. But I think Tobagonians have been there before. There are many Tobagonians right now asking why we lost Sandals. You know what was said? You know what was said then? When the Sandals family pulled out? The Prime Minister and the government didn't sell the project effectively enough. Well, that is why I'm here now saying I intend to support, and my government supports fully, the Rocky Point Hotel in Tobago and other hotel sites that may be chosen. Tobago needs more hotel rooms. Tobago needs quality jobs. Tobago needs to improve its economy, not only for Tobago, but for Trinidad and Tobago. So I make no apologies to anybody. It's part of my day's work. And the third thing I want to raise is this. The Parliament is coming to recess in a few weeks. In fact, because of the requirement for the Parliament to go into recess on the first Friday of July, it appears that there will be no sitting of the House in July. So we can only now sit between now and the end of June. And it was always my intention, after the difficulty arose with the SSA and the work that has been done in dealing with that surprising difficulty, as chairman of the National Security Council, I think I need to say something to the Parliament about what has gone on there or is going on there, and I will try to do that somewhere before the Parliament goes on recess. So that's as much as I want to say to you now. If you have any questions that are on those subjects or otherwise, we'll take them now and hope we get them before the lights go again.
Prime Minister, good afternoon. Akar Samaru, Guardian Media. With respect to the leaked cabinet document, and we touched on it, but I want to ask you again, are you concerned that there was a leak in the first place? Have you tried to find out where that leak came from or
Hello.
anything like that?
In the media, I'm sure you read all these things all the time. Cabinet leak is an integral part of cabinet operation. And as a matter of fact, it has been said that leaking takes, the cabinet is the only ship that leaks from the top. I didn't give anybody cabinet documents, but the cabinet documents pass through a number of levels of contact, and the opposition leader is not a lady without resources. I was in opposition too. So as I said, we have nothing to hide. So if documents of the cabinet end up in the hands of people in the opposition, we have nothing to fear. So I'm not really worried about that. What I want is that what is in the cabinet document is represented to the public truthfully by officers of state. I'm not even saying the media, because the media has a way you could interpret and but officers of state are required by their oath of office to not misrepresent and not lie to the population about government documents when you have them in your hand. Okay?
Spoke about VAT, and I want to ask you about another thing that caused some concern, which is CDAP. And I want to contextualize the question.
Yeah, wait, that's a good one. Let's do that, because again, I did see how that played out. I spoke about CDAP, and I was responding to what was said about the Minister of Finance when he spoke about CDAP. Let me respond to your question again, and for the benefit of educating the public, and I'm speaking here as the head of the government who is responsible for what the government does. It was raised by the Minister of Finance as a statement of fact about the large allocation and the growing allocation that we are spending in the health sector throughout the country, the richest country in the world, in Europe. Anyway, health sector expense is always an issue. And it's an emotive one too, because all of us have an interest in health and the healthcare delivery. The Minister of Finance pointed out how our healthcare expenses have grown exponentially. Two things may have caused that significant growth. One, we have increased the breadth of the infrastructure in the country. Every time you build a hospital or a health center or anything to do with health, you automatically increase the budget because you're providing more health care. And secondly, there have been increasing costs. We're providing higher quality medicine in the more health care. And sometimes there may be leakages through loss and corruption. But the Minister of Finance pointed out how the increases have. I think what he actually said again yesterday was, you could look at the numbers. Compare the older budgets with this budget, where in earlier budgets, the healthcare was 1.6 billion, something like that. 1 billion. And if you go a little further back, you meet it lower than that. But let's say 1 billion, 20 years ago. Right. 22 years ago, it was $1 billion we were spending and giving the nation health care. Today, we're spending $7.5 billion. I watched the numbers. I mean, the numbers for medication in the hospital. You watch, and when the Minister of Health comes, you can't tell him no. Because notwithstanding what you hear, the government gives priority to ensuring that not just basic medication is available in our health centers and our hospitals, but way beyond. Some of those medications are extremely expensive, made available for free. Cancer care. Yesterday I was looking at that. Some of the costs for some of those medicine and cancer care in this country. I'm sure if you go out the street and ask, do a poll, 90% of people tell you it's a waste of time. But we spend priority hundreds of millions of dollars in that area. CDAP, what was said about CDAP and what the government is saying and what I'm saying here now, and I want the population to listen to me. When we could have afforded it, CDAP grew from 35 million to 400 million. Fact, undisputed. We are now in a situation where affordability is in front of us as a matter of concern. In 2008 was the year this country earned more money than any other year. Then Wall Street collapsed in 2009, and our circumstances changed, our revenue changed. By the time we got to 2015, we were scrambling to pay public servants. We are on a relatively even keel now, but with challenges all around. And we're saying, one, we can't grow CDAP like 35 to 400 million. We're having difficulty maintaining 400 billion, but that does not mean that we will abandon the policy of providing medication to people. We can then take a decision to provide what is affordable. And I said in the parliament, if 200 million is affordable or 300 million, we will still have that as a CDAP program. No. I got a response from my colleague in the opposition. Don't touch CDAP. Don't touch CDAP. No, that is coming from somebody who will never have to make a decision about CDAP, but could talk as much foolishness as CDAP. We want to find out first, is there any leakage or corruption or loss? Are we buying the right drugs at the right price? We want to know that. That's why we look at it. Are we providing the people who qualify for CDAP? So these are the things we do, as we did with GATE. When we came into government, GATE was running at $700 million. We brought it down to 400 by, one, making sure that we stay committed to it. It is available, but people are not now running between 3 or 4 or 5 courses. Backyard place is not turning into university and giving degrees. Everybody's checked up. You do one part of the course, you get fired. You didn't finish it, you jump to another one. Retired people going and doing degrees on CDAP. We stop all of that because, one, affordability forced us to look at it, and we looked at it, and now GATE is running. As a matter of fact, we just expanded GATE in the medical health area, providing young doctors outside of St. Augustine with full tuition in other universities. So we do these things to get more out of our resources. So when you get up and say, don't touch CDAP. So if we find ourselves in a position where we can't afford it, just close your and jump over the cliff. And I simply want to say, since when the opposition leader fall in love with CDAP so much, to love it more than the PNM, it was the PNM that I lead. I was in the cabinet when a PNM government took a decision to provide chronic disease assistance in a program. That's what CDAP is. So we who give it birth must love it more. And a lot of people who know telling you don't touch this and don't touch that, don't touch the other, they're very silent on other monies, you know. But government money is fungible. $900 million you allow OAS to go away with. The parliament is investigating that matter now. What is Mrs. Prasad Bisasa telling our people? Don't take part in the parliamentary investigation of the $971 million issue that we had to go to court. We had to go to court and fight to be allowed to get that money back. We got it back with a caveat. We used it. We built the Point 14 highway instead of the contractor going away with the money. But they're still fighting arbitration, and I told this country, if they manage to win the arbitration, because you never know, a courthouse is a lottery. If they manage to win the arbitration and the court forces us to give them back the money, you would have paid for the highway twice. Because the government that she led took out the clause that protected taxpayer, where it was said that if the company goes bankrupt, the government owns the bonds. They took out that clause the day before the election of 2015 and have the unmitigated gall to be coming now and want to question this government and telling the government, don't touch CDAP. As if you are so concerned about ensuring that the public money is spent on the public. There's a contractor who is now in Panama who left this country the day after the election. That contractor received a $1 billion contract for something that they were building in Beaton that is covered in bush down there and it cannot be completed. And when you looked into it, they were paid 80% of the money for 40% of the job. The last $1 billion they took out of NGC. They took out 17 billion from the NGC. That was the last billion, and gave it to a contractor. In a contract where two contractors were bidding as qualified contractors. One was SIS, another was a Mexican contractor, and both of them qualified. One bid, I think it was a billion, and the other one bid 400 million, something like that. And they gave it $400 million more. That's what they did. And let me tell you something else too. We were engaged in attempting to stop contractors from making claims against you, taxpayer. There was one contractor who had certificates of claim for $1 billion. And had the UNC won the election, they would have paid every cent of those claims. We fought those claims because they were not entirely without concerns to us. In the court, the judge removed approximately $600 million of that. Does that mean anything to you, people of Trinidad and Tobago? Had the PNM not gone to court and fought it competently, in a sustained way, and getting the court to rule that of these claims, only 400 million is certifiable. If I had led a government where those three examples I just gave you there was the record of my government, I would hang my head in shame and hope that you forgot that I was here. Let me give you one more before we go off. Queue up interchange that you now take for granted. You pass below queue up interchange and go up the hill, you don't even look at it again. That was being built for $500 million. Election 2015. Back and all over it. Minister fired. Remember that story? When we came in, we canceled all those arrangements and we went out to open the tender, qualified tenders. And we got the best tender. I think it was $325 million. No, 225. The tender came in at 225. We built it for 217, right? And $300 million were not added to that project. Queue up interchange. That would have been built for $500 million had the election been different. So frankly, I don't intend to spend much time being sidetracked by Mrs. Prasad Bissessa and her group, which includes, incidentally, the Lysport people. Right? Yeah.
So my question is, have you all started that audit or analysis of CDAP, and will it eventually lead to some people being removed from the program?
Well, we did not discuss that in the way it has been discussed. We are looking at government expenditure across the board. And that is why the Minister of Finance mentioned it, and that's why I said in the Parliament, the way it grew from 35 to 400 million, we are now in a situation where we have to make sure we're getting value for money, and I make no apologies for looking at it to make sure that the money that we're spending is spent on what we want it to buy, and the people who are getting it are the people who are supposed to get it. And if there are opportunities where we can do better with 400 million, and if we can't afford 400 million and we can only afford 300 million, then it may very well be, like in the scholarship program, where you get more people getting better service from a better managed 300 million than a 400 million that is spent vai, and you can't account for what you spend. The government has to keep looking at it. But we have not taken any decision to cut CDAP or to shut down CDAP. We just mention it as part of the area of government responsibility where we will review it as we go forward, but we're committed to ensuring that people with chronic diseases get what the country can afford. Unless, of course, somebody want to tell me, don't put the caveat of what we can afford. Just say we're going to spend it as an entitlement. And I said in the Parliament, it is not an entitlement. It's not in the Constitution. It's government policy that set about to help and help and help, and we will continue to do that, whether it's in education, whether in health, or wherever. But the country has to be properly run by honest people. And as I said, you know, in Tobago we have a saying that go to the ball for the water, not he who want it. Yeah? When you hear them talking about trying to protect public money, Alibaba and the 40 thieves. Ladies and gentlemen, so we are not afraid of what we're doing. And that's why we aren't afraid of leaks.
Prime Minister, good day. Kimberly Fletcher, Guardian Media. On the topic of leaks, one of your ministers, Minister Cummings, is suing the state over a leaked special branch report that's alleging criminal conduct possibly on his part. Are you concerned about this? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm not concerned. Every citizen of this country has a right to approach the court if they feel that they've been wronged. Every citizen. Doesn't matter where you're located. The law doesn't exclude you. If Minister Cummings, if he's advised by his lawyers, he's not advised by the government. He's a member of the government. He's not suing the government. He's suing the state. And if he thinks that he has a problem, I had a problem once too, you know. Some people had gone and put gossip and lies in a report and put it to the Integrity Commission, who put it to the DPP, who put it. And you know something? You know what's funny about that? I was naked and exposed. Because when that got to the DPP, national security, it's a matter of national security. When that matter got to the DPP sent it to a senior counsel, a renowned senior counsel. I know what the senior counsel did. The senior counsel started drafting 17 charges against me. Even though at the office of the DPP, nobody saw anywhere where I had been given the opportunity to respond to the allegations. Would you believe that? When I read that in the newspapers, that I was under police investigation for these allegations that caused me to be attracting police for criminal conduct on my part, I was shocked. It is only when at first I just thought, what nonsense the paper writing here? But I read the story Sunday morning. I saw a confirmation from the DPP's office and a confirmation from the Commissioner of Police. It was a Sunday morning. I called my lawyers and said, meet me at 5 o'clock this evening, because this can't be right. So we all have our rights. At the end of the day, the Integrity Commission had to resign in disgrace. So let us not get carried away by who's suing who. When you go to court, you have to have facts. Because it's a nice, cool, air-conditioned room. It's very quiet, and you have to answer specific questions. So, on this matter, not recently. I spoke to him initially when the matter became in the public domain about something that he might have done. I spoke to him, and he showed me his documents, and I was satisfied that his documents didn't warrant my intervention anyway. So if he thinks that he's wronged, and anybody in this country who feel they're wronged, you see it every day. So I would not deprive Minister Cummings. What I did see, though, which I should mention here, I saw in one of your papers, I'm not sure which one. I tell you what, I read whatever you write all the time, right? Sometime in the early morning, I saw where it said that Minister Cummings couldn't have done that without the Prime Minister's approval. Come on, absolute rubbish. Minister Cummings does not need my approval to sue the state if he feels that he has been wrong. Neither do you or anybody in my government. Okay, so let us be serious about things like that.
Prime, Harry, ECB News. I want to speak to you about the game last night, the World Cup games that you were at, and I was there too. There was an issue with the...
I thought you were speaking about my heart.
Your heart. Oh, yeah. No, but there was a lot of issue with the park and ride. People had to wait hours just to get the facility, and then afterwards they had to wait longer. Our little children to go back to get their cars, and also some people even walk, on the highway just to go and get their cars. That seems to be not a nice situation.
I think we're making some progress there, but we haven't made enough progress yet. That venue has now become, I would probably say, one of the premier venues in the Caribbean for cricket, and I expect more and more cricket would be played there. And I am glad that people are supporting the venture, but we really have to do better with respect to what you're raising there. UDCOT has the responsibility for, we made some improvements, but certainly not enough. We have to be able to organize access and egress in such a way that people can, in a reasonable time, get to the ground, park, get inside, and when it's over, leave in a reasonable time. We're not there yet. We still have a lot more work to do. Unfortunately, the one good thing about it is that there's space around the venue to allow more infrastructure to be built. And I'm hoping that in the not too distant future, what you saw last night and the inconveniences there would be a thing of the past, that we can get in easily and get out easily and have as much more games as we plan to have there. The venue is made. That's the one good thing, but it has these problems. I did see it last night myself. I was on the way to the game, and I saw some people in standstill traffic, and I was pretty sure that they were not going to get inside before the game started or even well into the game. And then, of course, when everybody's leaving at the same time after the game, you need to have routes out that people can flow out. We don't have those routes as yet. We need to build more. And so we are in the process, and the government will, as the resources become available, add more and more to it. And we're hoping that, we will have, one of the things we're hoping to have around there soon is a hotel close to the venue, so that some people, especially those who have to be down there, can literally be close by. And that would be another piece of infrastructure which would improve the quality and acceptability of the ground as a, maybe one day we have a test cricket there. And that's one of the things that we have to get down there to get. That's what I think.
Coming up, and of course, if West Indies are there, or some other team that is supported, it might cause more frustration. Can anything be done maybe
between
in the short
now
term?
and then? I think, there's always something that can be done, but I don't know what they will do. The traffic management people will try to manage in such a way that we, as the infrastructure allow, ameliorate the problem. But to say to build something between now and then, no, not really. We have to use what we have and manage the flows. I'm not a traffic management expert, but I know it may be possible to manage the flows better. And I will just advise the patrons to leave a little earlier and give yourself a little more time to get down there and enjoy the game. On this occasion, maybe next time around, we would have done more and it would be easier. And eventually, we would have solved the problem.
And what are your thoughts on West Indies' chances of winning the World Cup?
Well, the West Indies' chances are as good as anybody else's, as long as, and if we play according to the quality of our team on paper, other teams will have to respect us. Last night they gave us a bit of a scare, but in the end they played magnificently to win that match last night, because you don't win a match like that against a team like New Zealand that is desperate. New Zealand had to win last night, and they played very well. And in the end, the game turned out to be, quite a good game. But we didn't start off very well. But T20, who's a big favorite in T20, no? Afghanistan. You wouldn't have thought so. But the game is growing by leaps and bounds, and we are hoping to be there. And as long as we play our best, we should be top-notch. So support the team, and don't be a fair weather friend.
Prime Minister, you mentioned Tobago and mentioned tourism in Tobago, but what about the oil spill? I mean, months has passed. What are your thoughts about how it's being treated? And there's a more leakage, actually. So what are your thoughts on that?
That oil spill, we really got away from a horrible situation there. That vessel came into Tobago, apparently came in overturned and slipped in. And if it had struck Tobago a little further east, the biggest problem we would have had initially was the closing of the port of Scarborough. And that would have meant the ferries couldn't run, the cruise ships couldn't come in, and the cleanup would have been hugely more expensive. But as fate would have it, the striking of the island was west of Scarborough. And as the longshore drift brought the oil up, it brought it just to the edge of the port. I mean, right down in Lower Scarborough, the oil was there. Another 200 yards, and it would have been in the channel, in the port, and that would have been a different story. You could imagine Tobago with no boats coming in the port. Then you would have heard something, and then to clean it up, to bring it to a standard. I went in there the day on Carnival Sunday. There was a cruise ship that came into port because it was clean enough for it to come in. There was only a sheen on the water, and the cruise ship captain said it was okay for him to come in. He came in the Costa, one of those big Italian cruise ships. And to me, that was the biggest break we got. Because if that soiling had started taking place, say, like Pembroke or Roxborough, it would have made a huge mess of all of Western Tobago. And then, but fortunately, we have to thank God for small mercies. It struck beyond Magdalena. Then there was the mangrove there that captured quite a bit of it. It's not going to kill the mangrove. Mangrove recovers very easily from the mud in the mangrove, helps the oil to break down. And oil breaks down over time. And the rocks on the coastline going down, they cleaned up some of it. They cleaned up some of the beaches. They've done a fair amount of cleanup work. If there's any leakage taking place, no, I hadn't heard that. But if there is, I wouldn't be surprised because they're extracting. The minister told me there are still about 10,000 barrels of oil in the hull, and they're extracting it carefully and slowly. I thought it would have been done. I thought it would have been done by the end of this month. They're now telling me the schedule is for it to be done by middle of next month or thereabout, and then they have to right the ship and get it out of there. So much of what could have been done has been done, and we just have to. We live in an area, there's marine traffic passing between Trinidad and Tobago. You all have no idea how much traffic passes between us, going all over the world. Some of it is carrying cargo like that. And on this occasion, we had an incident which gave us some damage. It will recover because it's a natural product which will break down. While it is there, it is quite unpleasant and it can cause damage. But again, we've removed much of what could have been removed. And over time, it will get back to some normalcy. The sea is doing its work, and we have done ours.
Into riot, they say that they don't believe that central government is doing enough. They think more needs to be done.
Like what?
Like
what?
Including the removal of the vessel, cleanup of the...
Well, that is precisely what we are... You see, people could say those things if they don't have anything else to say. That is precisely what we are doing. And we are doing it with best practice. We brought in experts. We're paying a lot of money to handle it properly. So what will they be doing if they were doing it? We have not abandoned the issue. We have not abandoned the assignment. We didn't have the capacity to handle it the way it ought to be handled. We brought it in, and it's going to be paid for. The people on the island of Tobago, using their resources, did what they could have done. Much of what is to be done now is being done, and it will take some time. It's not something that you just flick a switch and it's gone. The oil has soiled the rocks, the soil, the sand. I saw trucks going out removing sand because you didn't want it being recycled when the tide goes up and the tide goes down. I saw people all around. I was there from Carnival Sunday. I spent my Carnival in Tobago. I went to Carnival Sunday morning. I never left. Right? And I saw it from the beginning, and we're going to see it through to the end. So people will talk, but much of what is being said is not supported by any factual or any new information. It's the same thing as looking for the owner. I mean, you have any idea how many vessels there are in the water in the Caribbean Sea at any given time? Might be about 20,000. And in that crowd, they're not all law-abiding people. You will always find a small group of people who believe, and sometimes successfully so, that they can do things illegally and get away with it. And trading in goods, especially goods like oil and like things like that. There are some people who are not following the rules. They get into trouble. They cut the vessel and they run. Right? You now find the vessel has a wrong, it's like a motor car with a wrong number plate. They change the color. So we look at that. We're talking around the world to see who might know something. And of course, they put these things in a way where if they're ever caught or if it ever comes to light, they shield themselves. But the key to it is that we have to repair the damage. It's not something we can just say, well, we don't know who did it, and therefore we don't do it. We had to incur the expense. We had to put the effort out to protect our island. And we've done that, and we are doing that. I have no doubt I've seen oil spills in many areas before, sometimes far worse than that. And over time, once you do the initial good work, over time, nature will take care of the situation.
So Alina Dudnas from Loop News. Two quick questions.
Loop
News.
Yes.
Following on from that matter, conservation groups are concerned, of course, neighboring Guyana has a booming oil and energy sector. They're asking for a regional contingency plan to be set up. I don't know what are your thoughts on that. And secondly, it's been almost 6 months since the report on the Commission of Inquiry into the Paria diving tragedy was sent to the DPP's office. I know, as an observer, are you concerned about the time that that's taking? Thank you.
Well, let me answer the first one first. The idea of a regional contingency plan is eminently good sense, and Trinidad and Tobago will support that. And in fact, people, the region would look to us to play a major role in that. It's Guyana, it's Suriname, it's Venezuela, it's Trinidad and Tobago, it's Barbados, it's Grenada. Because this part of the region, we are all involved in the hydrocarbon business. And it would make good sense. In fact, what happened in Tobago, I'm pretty sure, would be observed and used as a learning experience for our neighbors and people worldwide as to how you handle it, because we all do it all the time. Whenever there's an incident, you look at it to see what you can learn from it and what your people can learn and to be ready in the event that you're called upon to do something. And with Guyana, handling such large volumes offshore, I mean, you saw what happened in the Gulf of Mexico when BP had a problem. God forbid that something like that, happens in the Guyana field. We will really be in the middle of it. So we all look for best practice, and we all hold the people that are involved to subscribe to the understanding that safety and good sense trump everything else. So we Trinidad and Tobago, the last week, we were we represented in the Suriname meeting. We were very involved in the Guyana meetings. We are in MOU with Barbados and Grenada. We are in the government, talking to the government of Venezuela. We're talking to the Europeans. We talk to the Americans. So we do have some semblance of things in place. So formalizing it more and more can only make us better prepared and stronger. And the other point you raised was?
Commission of Inquiry.
Commission of Inquiry. Well, all I can say about that is that's a legal matter at this stage. There was a demand in the country to the government to have a Commission of Inquiry. We did just that. The Commission of Inquiry wanted more time to do a thorough job. We gave that time. And between the government and the Office of the President, we ended up with a Commission of Inquiry with a package of recommendations, which I am told are being implemented as far as we're able to. With respect to liabilities and compensation, that's in the legal domain where I have no competence and no responsibility. But I know that the ministry, speaking for the government, had indicated and instructed PARIA to be as cooperative as it can and to be as empathetic as it can in the business. In the meantime, we have to be guided by the lawyers because lawyers from both sides are involved in the matter. And when it becomes a legal matter, your options tend to become very narrow and hardened.
Yes. Sorry, do you think 6 months is too long for it to be sitting at the
Well, that is not for me to say. I mean, the lawyers who are speaking for any party may not agree with what I would say. I don't have a yardstick to measure it by, except that I would hope that the families that are affected, who are expecting some liability to lie with Paria and the other company, that they will get some relief of some kind. That's what I'm expecting. But I can't get involved in or to direct the legal pace at which these things go.
Prime Minister,
Yes.
there's a African Development Bank,
Name, rank, and serial number.
Kevin Henry, 91.9 FM.
Thank you.
There's an African bank that is trying to make its way to Trinidad and Tobago, and they are saying that they are getting some resistance. I don't know if you're aware of that. And
No, wait. The African Bank is saying that, or Hartbury is saying that?
Bank.
Is the African Bank saying that, or is it Hartbury saying that? Because I heard Harvey saying that, but I didn't hear the bank saying that. But let me answer your question. Yes, the Afro-Exim Bank is reaching out to the Caribbean. We are very, very involved with CARICOM. As you all may have noticed in the last 3 years or so, or I would say the last 4 years, CARICOM has made a lot of effort in reaching out and growing our relationship with Africa, the Middle East, right? And elsewhere in the world. There's been a very big push by CARICOM to get involved or to have involved in our region the people who are our friends outside of our region. Afro-Exim Bank is one of those initiatives. It's come about as a result of CARICOM looking towards Africa. The relationship between CARICOM and Africa now is extremely close, and we work on many things in the financial area, on the area of trying to invite investment and to grow trade and so on, and to strengthen diplomacy working as a unit. You would have seen how that worked during COVID, where we had to rely on South Africa for our major batch of COVID vaccines. There's a little difficulty, and that difficulty is experienced so far with Afro-Exim Bank and its documentation and operation in our country. Trinidad and Tobago and one other CARICOM country has the difficulty. Right? And that is the bank is asking for its staff, all its staff, to earn tax-free salaries in Trinidad and Tobago. What that means is that local people working for the bank, I don't know why the bank is taking that position, but that's the bank's position, that its staff, whether local or foreign, would not pay tax in the country. Now, that has far-reaching consequences because it is against the existing arrangements of privileges and immunities and policies. We have a number of international agencies that have that reside in Trinidad and Tobago and conduct business here. And the law and the policies are that if you are a foreigner working with the agency, then that issue of tax would allow you to get your tax or not be taxed in Trinidad and Tobago. But local people working for the entity, if you are a local person, like working for the UN or working for the OAS or somebody like that, if you are a local person, you are taxable in Trinidad and Tobago if you are a Trinidad and Tobago citizen working here. But if you are a foreigner working here with the entity, then there's provision. This bank is saying that all our staff must be tax-free. Now, the Minister of Finance, if he agrees to that, and we agree to that, it will have far-reaching consequences for everybody else. And we are not at this time prepared to agree to that. In smaller territories where they do not have this problem, it is easy to say yes to the bank on that. It is not so easy for us to say yes. So please don't compare us with St. Kitts and because they don't have the same problem that we have. We have a large contingent of people who will be affected by that. We're still talking. As a matter of fact, I heard it said that we are being anti the bank and anti-Africa. That's not true at all. As a matter of fact, I met with the head of the bank in my office here in Whitehall a few months ago. Paid a call on me. And we are quite keen to have the bank function in our area, but the terms have to be acceptable. That's all. So my friend Harvey, who has been crying on the radio, tell them that we are not against Africa. We're not against the African Bank. We are just trying to work out the relation, the logistics of it. Right?
Ask, how is it coming along with the flight from Ghana to Trinidad?
Oh, we're still trying to get an established airline that has the equipment to put a leg, Ghana, Caribbean. They say Kumasi, Trinidad and Tobago. At Kumasi, you have 3-4 million people. And Accra, you might have another 3 million people. The Caribbean, we have the Caribbean crowd here. It's one of the few areas in the world where you have these populations and these interests, cultural and otherwise, and you don't have an air link. But for that air link to be sustained and to make sense, it has to be an appendage on something that exists now or something that comes into being, funded by somebody. Because the first plane is not going to make the airline, right? You have to fund it. People will have to know it's there and want to use it. So it may need to be supported for a while. And if it's supported by traders or tourists and so on, and that's where we're trying to find the airline that would add that leg. I mean, going from here to Ghana 15 hours is against 8 hours. You know, but the governments in Ghana, the governments in the Caribbean, we are looking at it, and with the private sector to see who we can encourage to open that market, because there is a market there. I can tell you there's great interest in Ghana for Trinidad and Tobago's produce and Trinidad and Tobago's people, and vice versa. There's just no reasonable air link. When I went to Mandela's funeral in Pretoria, we flew non-stop from Piako to Pretoria. But no, you can't. If we have to go to do business in Accra, no, we have to go to London, and then from London go to Africa. So it's probably, you know, the trip is taking twice as long. And of course, every minute, every mile is a cost. And the governments that we've been talking to, the people who are out of the opposition in Ghana now and the government in Ghana now, they all agree that we should do something about it. And the interest of the African Union now in the diaspora is causing people to think that the time has come for us to, you know, do what has to be done to put an air link in place between the Caribbean and West Africa. But I couldn't tell you when that's going to be done, but I know we're working on it.
I just want to ask you a very quick question about crime, and I just want to put it out there. I'm not asking about any specific person.
You don't have to apologize.
Oh, you say it's an ongoing matter. It's not about any specific person. But we recently went through a period where we had these foreign YouTubers come to Trinidad and Tobago, vloggers come to Trinidad and Tobago and going into these so-called hotspot areas and speaking with these alleged gang members. And of course, it gives us a particular image when they post these videos online. And I was wondering, did you look at any of these videos, and what are your thoughts on this happening?
This is, given what's going on with the technology in the world today and the business in the world today, I'm not surprised that this issue has arisen, because it is something that people have an interest in. And once people have an interest in it, and you are technologically able to supply that interest and feed that interest, this is the kind of thing that will happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't present us. It doesn't show our better side. But in our population, like in other populations, we have some people who are engaged in activity that don't make us proud and even threaten our own safety and security. That's what that is. The people who are doing that, they're not doing it because they want to help us or they like us. They're doing it because it works for them. Right? They get likes, and the more ridiculous, the more violent, the more shocking, better for them. So they come and do it here. We are an open society. We are an open society, open to nationals and open to foreigners who are friendly to Trinidad and Tobago, Canadians, United States. If it wasn't him, it would have been somebody else. Right? And if the question you want to ask is, how come he could find them and we can't find them, is that they make themselves available to him. they don't make themselves available to the police. That's the first thing. Secondly, they too need to be out there, especially if there are no consequences. And we, in establishing consequences, while being an open society, we are governed by the rule of law. And our laws here permit certain things. You have to step very carefully. Information is not evidence. In the absence of evidence, you can't arrest people. And if you do arrest them, they have rights that you have to respect, and so on and so on. So these are all part of a wider web. And I don't think the country should be embarrassed or ashamed about it. I don't think we should try to fight anybody over it. What we should do is try and learn from it and learn of it and ensure that our security people find these miscreants, whoever they are, because they are threatening all of us.
Mr. On the topic of crime, we're seeing right now an increase in home invasions.
Really?
Yeah. We've seen a lot of home invasions recently, actually. The business community has been calling out for it, a lot of business persons and the general public. I mean, what is being done
It's
to
going
combat
on, but I don't know if it's increasing. I mean, when you say increase, it's happening. But I don't know if it's happening at a faster rate. But it's happening every now and then. You see that somebody has done something like that. Yeah, okay. And you're saying, what's your question?
I mean, what is being done to combat this problem? We see it happening right now quite often.
Well, our security services are interested in any such crime. But unfortunately, the criminals have one advantage that we are never going to get. And that is a person of a criminal mind who decides to commit a crime, especially a crime like that. They are the only person who knows when they will do it. They don't put out a signal before. So therefore, you always find yourself responding to something like that. We know it's happening. We see the phenomenon, and the police can look to see what triggers it or who is engaged in it and so on. And people, each of us would be required to, I saw a video where somebody I know was being beaten up by invaders who climbed over his fence. There was a fence. People living in a neighborhood where there is not this, what kind of neighborhood? What kind of person? And then, when people make a decision to commit crime, the sociologists will have to work that out. Why do they do that? In most instances, it's because they believe they can get away with it. And our security services, with the help of the population, must try and ensure that they don't get away with it. Because when they get away with it, they'll do it again. And others will join in. And that's why the detection level needs to improve. And that's why our police service needs to be the best that they can be. And we provide the police service with what the country could afford and more. And we expect that they will be interested, the same way that gentleman was interested in who is where with those guns. We expect that the police will be interested and let them fail to get away with what they're getting away with. And it's a job that we know that we have to stay on the job. It's not going to be done overnight. We have to stay on the job and look for every gun in this country that's an illegal gun or a legal gun that is being used for illicit purposes. So it's an assignment that I wish we didn't have because it's wasting our resources. We have to spend a lot of money on security issues, both in the public sector and the private sector. It's a waste of national resources. A few people engaged in criminal conduct is causing us to direct a lot of resources to them, to control them and their behavior and to protect ourselves from them. You can imagine if we were behaving differently and those millions that we're spending on national security were being spent on education and health and infrastructure and so on. We'd have been a much better place. And the more we have to spend is the less resources we have to spend on it. So they are damaging us in more ways than one. I see people asking, are the criminals causing foreign investor? But that's foreign investor. What about local people? What about local allocation of resources? We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on security items to keep people out of your yard. And of course, there are families who have members of their families who are murderers, killers who are known to them. They're supporting them, hiding them. Some of them hiding the guns for them. And at the end of the day, we are wasting not just time, lives and resources. And it's a job that we cannot walk away from. And it's a job that we have to ensure that adequate resources are made available. I think we're doing that with adequate resources. We have a lot of people engaged in national security, and we expect that at the end of the day, in some time in the not too distant future, we'll turn this thing around. But there are obstacles in the way. And one of the obstacles is that criminals still believe and continue to believe with good reason that they will not be held accountable. Even when they get to the courthouse, they're not held accountable. Last week I saw somebody in the courthouse. They got there for, what was the crime again? Some ridiculous crime. And they got put on a bond. Oh, kidnapping for ransom. Kidnapping for ransom. Kidnapping for ransom. One of the most heinous crimes. And I saw a person walking out of the courthouse on a bond. And to make the bond palatable, they were told that if you misbehave, you'll be able to pay $50,000. No, please, don't charge no criminal that kind of money, $50,000, because for God's sake, if they have to pay it, the only way they could pay it, because they love their freedom, if that's what they have to pay to maintain their freedom, is just to come out and distress other people to get the money to pay the court. Understand? I can't. I'm still trying to, understand, how one gets out of court for kidnapping for ransom on a bond. But Trinidad and Tobago, that's happened there.
Earlier, you said that the EMA is used to disrupt development. Can you just explain that? What exactly you mean by that? Do we need to revisit maybe EMA Act or something like that?
Well, good question. Maybe we should. And maybe we should do that. Let me tell you something. You hear this story about diversification, right? One of the biggest efforts at diversification in this country was done under the Patrick Manning government when we tried to get involved in aluminium, right? I'm a geochemist by training, and I saw people who don't even know the first word in the periodic table giving all kind of statements how aluminium is going to kill us. Not killing anybody in Canada, not killing anybody in Bahrain, not killing anybody in Australia, but it will kill in Trinidad and Tobago. People who didn't know the northern end or the southern end of the neck, right? And the end result of that is that there were politicians who wanted to get into office, jump on the bandwagon, and they had summit against aluminium, right? And they won the election. The project had already got all its approvals. They went to court, and under the provisions of the EMA process, claimed that some consultation did not take place. The court never shut down the project. The court simply asked that that consultation should take place so as to justify and conclude the process of approvals. That was the EMA involved. That was the EMA process. That was the process. You know what the government did? The new government? They just didn't do what the court gave them the clearance to do. Because had they done that, there would have been no obstacle in the way of an aluminum industry. By that time, we had already incurred liabilities which I now have to deal with. $300 million is the claim from the company that was put out when that project was shut down. Are you aware of that? Are you aware of that? I said this twice before from a podium. The Chinese company is claiming that against the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's largely because we're diplomatically holding it and talking to the Chinese, and eventually we're going to get to a point where we can't hold it much longer. But that act of not doing that little process thing that the court said, so as to proceed to diversify our economy. I don't know if anybody in Trinidad and Tobago looks at the aluminium market and see what's going on there, where we should have been, but we're not there. Right? But the very same people talking about diversifying the economy. And when you try to diversify it, whether it is through a sandals project in Tobago, whether it is aluminium, whether it is whatever, they stand in the way of saying, don't touch it, don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. This country has to have governments, or a government that has to do with what is good for the country without fear or favor, without malice or ill will. And at the end of the day, as my grandmother said, if good comes, it comes for all of us. And if bad comes, it comes for all of us. But having said that, I think it's a good time. We should say thank you very much and have a good day and see you again sometime soon. And as my pastor said in the church on Sunday morning, pray for the West Indies. We want to end up at least in the finals. Okay? Thank you all very much.
This is TTT. Live for local.